This is Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Here are your hosts, Dr. Tim Slecker and Dr. Johnny Lupinacci, educated educators talking education.
We are going to talk education. It's Busted Pencils. It's fully leaded education talk. Educated educators talking education. Want to drive that home this morning. Homeroom Monday. Welcome back to class, everybody. We appreciate seeing you, knowing you're out there. In fact, making all the connections that you always do to Busted Pencils. Hey, and just a reminder before we get started, you can always participate. Make sure you do. 608-557-8577. 608-557-8577. That's the Busted Pencils mailbag. We want to hear from you. And, I'm at it too. Hey, if you're listening on, Apple iTunes or not iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of those, you know what? Tell the world how much you love Busted Pencils. Give us a ranking. Tell the world because we appreciate that. Johnny and Jess, another homeroom. So good to see both of you. Whew. Man, lots going on. But Johnny, how are you?
Man, I'm great. It's the last week of the first month of the year. So, we're doing all right. It's been an eventful month. Listeners, I'm a big fan of MLK Day, and not just the day, but the teachings of Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King. And so I'm still riding that energy of some really great events out there in the community and on my college campus. And my future teachers that I work with are doing great work. They're, living in this moment that you're all listening in and responding to I'll kind of call it the roller coaster of things going on. We have the excitement of MLK, last week. And then we also had, the womp, womp, womp of inauguration, depending on, where your political, alliances lay. It was a pretty dismal moment for a lot of folks, and particularly young people who, really, really are articulating in a clear and loud voice. They're not represented well by Democrats. They're not represented at all right now by the Republican Party. And so, they're kind of trying to balance that roller coaster ride of, we got great leadership and things and celebration from the teachings of Martin Luther King and the like, but otherwise in politics, it's a little bit of a downer. So, we're riding that out, and I'm saying, hey, February is a new month next week, but let's make the last week of January, one of the best weeks of the month. So let's go.
Well, let's do it. And, we know that she's not the younger crowd that you're referring to, but Jess, how about your crowd and how you guys are doing?
When did I stop being referred to as part of the younger crowd?
Yeah, Tim just aged
Well,
you out of
no,
youth.
the one time we said, the youth, and you were like, well, I'm not that youth.
Womp,
And,
womp,
I said it was nice to be included in the youth.
Well, you still are very, especially when you put us next to me and Johnny. Last week on Thursday.
I don't know, man. I found a couple silver hairs yesterday.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Well, Tim, I got to say, I'm feeling some of that dismal emotion. And I'm tired, man. This past week was hard. It was really, really difficult to be part of this media enterprise and sifting through the barrage of hatred that is coming out of this new White House, that is just executive order after executive order of dehumanization. And I feel sad. I feel heavy and tired and in need of some educated educators to show me the light.
And that's why you're here at Homeroom with us every Monday morning, loving it. In fact, you know what? Yeah, we know that. In fact, my daughter's been calling me. It's been rough. We're not going to really go there as much, though, in this homeroom. Actually, Jess, we had an incredible example of a hero last week in all of that chaos.
That is true.
Somebody we could look up to. And before we, even introduce, why don't we just go right to the audio? Is that ready? And let's give the listener a taste of the awesomeness that actually occurred last week on top of the craziness. Go for it, Jess.
I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation. But the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors.
There you go. So anybody's going, hey, what was that? I missed that last week. Come on. That's why you're listening to Busted Pencil. So we do not allow you to miss. That was the Right Reverend Mary Ann Budde, as they say, or Budde. Yeah, that was the prayer service that goes along with the inauguration there. And she made those words in her sermon right there, and really laying out, and just to put a little context before that, she pointed out, and yes, this was directed at the incoming new administration. And in fact, she even said, future, or now the president, you believe that the sparing of your life from that assassin's bullet in the summer was an act of God. And so as we're here, in a house of God, would like you to consider these things that are happening right now, that we have fellow humans right now who are scared. And so I point this out and say thank you, because Johnny, Jess, this, I mean, when it comes to schools and education, those children of undocumented immigrants are fearful right now. I mean, some of them too might not even be coming to school for fear of ICE, quote, waiting for them at the door. Our LGBTQ students that are already in school, our teachers, LGBTQ teachers, the fear and the trauma. What an unhealthy way to start a day, to start a week, to start a month in a learning environment, when you're already tilted. And this reminds me of our friends, Educators Amplified, Teacher Joanna and Teacher Hallie. Setting people up for such fear and anxiety is not setting them up for success and a fulfilling education. And so, Johnny, I see the Right Reverend here, and just pull this out as an example of, this is a role model for us living in a democracy, of how we respond in what feels crazy and inhumane, that we still have a responsibility to protect, to to and not just protect, but also create the conditions of thriving. And so I just want to highlight a hero as we're going forward, because the work we do in education requires a hero's positionality as we're moving forward every day. It doesn't matter who's in office, but man, what a great example to remind us of what we can do. That was that's my sermon, Johnny.
Well, I love it. I mean, and it should be an always thing in schools, because I mean, we want to, and by no means is this me exonerating the incoming president, but I also want to acknowledge that, like, that fear you speak about has been pretty consistent
Mm-hmm.
through different administrations.
Right.
I love Obama, but Obama deported people.
Yeah, I did.
And I might not be the biggest Biden fan, but I was happier with Biden than I am with Trump. And that's not true in general, because my happiness is immovable by politics. But I mean, like, am I pleased with the policy and moves of Trump? Certainly not. But it's a reminder, and I love that you're highlighting that democracy in action.
Yeah.
That role that every teacher out there has, every school principal, every school building in this country as a public school has, to ensure a safe space for learners.
Mhm.
And that's not just in our classroom. That extends beyond that, right? We talk about that when we talk about, wrestling and football and glee club and, debate team and all of the community ways that our public schools, have a partnership with families and community. That partnership is with all the learners and all the families in our communities. And so a reminder that our schools are places where every child deserves, right, and has a right to a safe, healthy learning environment. And
Mm.
so that's not always the case for all children and all schools all across this country, and it ought to be. So anybody advocating for that at any moment to any administration, right? Democracy in action. Those are heroes to me. So all you teachers out there who are in this moment, remember your classroom is that space,
Mm-hmm.
right? And Tim, I like to remind folks, Bertolt Brecht, the playwright, had a famous quote, or maybe it's not famous. I'm just trying to get it to be famous,
There
especially
you go.
in the play, a young person asks, "Will there be singing in dark times?" And the response is, yes, they'll be singing about the dark times. So not only are we here to highlight these heroes, but we're here to sing songs of
Mm.
optimism, sing songs of how important human rights are, how important civil rights are to us, regardless of who our leader is. Right?
Yeah.
This is a democracy. It's a government for the people, by the people. And I like JFK. But I'm going to say JFK got it wrong when he said, not ask what your government can do for you, but what you can do for your government.
Mm-hmm.
I say, no, let's ask what our government can be doing for us, because it is the role and responsibility of leaders to, like our hero today said, not just show mercy, but show humanity,
Mm.
right? To all the great people in this country, whether they're, regardless of their status. I hate those labels that get mapped onto people. So, keep teaching,
Mm.
keep singing about dark times or singing in dark times, because maybe they're not as dark as they seem, right? Let's light them up with our positive energies and our commitments to these important aspects of democracy and humanity.
And just you put a nice reminder in there in the notes, and I said instead of letting Johnny and I take that, why don't you take that one?
Well, as I was watching this sermon from Reverend Buddy, I couldn't help thinking of Timothy Snyder's booklet on tyranny,
Mm.
where he lays out 20 lessons that he's learned from the 20th century or from the 21st century on how to respond, how to engage in the critical work of democracy when democracy is in the ICU, as Johnny tends to say. And this to me
It's on life
was
support. Yeah.
was a perfect example of that first lesson. Do not obey in advance.
Yes.
This is a woman who stood up and with the platform that she had and with her voice called out injustice, made a plea to the better angels. This was a call and a cry to support democracy.
Yeah. Powerful. I mean, and that's what, so we like this. On social media too, I'll just put it out there. God is on social media. He or she's on Twitter and Blue Sky out there. And I follow God because I believe in that. And even God this morning
The only
came
place
out.
you follow God, Tim.
Well, even God this morning came out on both Twitter and Blue Sky as saying, man, Reverend Buddy, thank you. Thank you for doing my work. And there's a little levity there, but the reality here though too is that, the criticism right away of Reverend Buddy is that how dare you bring this, church into the political fray. And it's just like, wait a minute.
Come on.
Come on,
Religion
man.
has always been political.
It's always been, and and guess who are the first ones calling that out? The ones who are advocating a Christian nationalism, a full-throated government that is in an indoctrinator of their vision of God and bringing in religion. And so this idea, it's just like, my goodness. But you think about this and it's like, yeah, Johnny, we're going to need to draw inspiration from these heroes, and Reverend Buddy's just one of those examples that we're going to continue to highlight, and we're going to talk about, because we are going to bring them forward. In fact, it makes me think, if you have some of those people, we want to know about them. 608-557-8577. 608-557-8577. That's the Busted Pencils mailbag. I was just thinking, Johnny and Jess, let's have listeners nominate those heroes for us so that we can bring attention to them in this time. Those people who are living and practicing and guarding democracy by actions that show that they are recognizing the humanity of our brothers and our sisters and our children and our grandchildren and our aunts and our uncles, all of it, and saying, we have an obligation here to most definitely protect those who are most vulnerable in moments. And you think about that too, our work as educators. Now, here I'm expanding that to, if you're in an education role, and boy, that's a ton of people, you right now are one of those people who can be called upon and, in fact, feel energized by Timothy Snyder's call for us not to obey in advance, and then to advocate in the moment what it does and what it is to be in harmony, in putting forward the commitment to saying, we are going to make sure that in these spaces, in this moment, that the protection of particularly those who are most vulnerable at this moment, they're getting extra protection, extra comfort in this moment. So I just think about that. Johnny, what do you think?
Well, Tim, I'm always going to come back to this. It's a nonpartisan issue.
Yeah.
When we start to localize things and talk about our communities, it's about the health and well-being and the kind of relationships we want in our neighborhoods, in our school communities, our districts, right, our regions, and it's time to take that back from politicians, right, and demand that kind of representation, but at the same time enact what we believe to be humane relationships, how we treat ourselves and those around us in our communities. And I actually think that people are really good at that. So I want to remember, for example, the great kind of stories that are coming out of, and I don't want to get excited about tragedy, but we're reminded as families and communities respond to the fires in Southern California, or to the mass flooding from Hurricane Helen and these kinds of things. It doesn't matter whether you're MAGA or whether you're, a radical liberal. When communities need support, humans come together and they take care of one another. And we're really good at it, especially in this country. And I'm proud of that, because that's patriotism. So remember, no matter how you identify, have humility and care for your neighbor. So let's keep highlighting those heroes and those stories. And now it's time for your moment of Zen. We all know individuals, most of them unsung, unrecognized, who have often, in the most modest ways, spoken out or acted on their beliefs for a more egalitarian, more just, peace-loving society.
Thanks, everybody, for listening and downloading Hangout Wednesday to hear about navigating math anxiety. For real this time, we moved our schedule a bit to get Heidi Sewack's episode out, with the registration for her AI challenge kit closing this week. Then we'll see you to talk about free throws and face-offs, and a full hour of pencil busting on Saturday across all the civic media talk stations. Now get out there and keep busting pencils.